During our live stream yesterday, not Hailey or Jason Broyles, whichever you prefer, raised some very valid points. The first being putting our favourite creators on a pedestal. We might find that we agree with them on a certain topic, and then we find out they voted for Trump or Biden, or they might view the evidence in a different case that we're all following very differently. And then we find ourselves lashing out in their comments, "You disappointed me!" When in actual fact, you set yourself up for disappointment by putting that person on a pedestal to begin with. Here's part of that conversation from yesterday.
When we started this on what is now 20 days ago or so, just about 3 weeks, Mofo Monday, or 2 weeks ago this Monday, we had all of that was unbeknownst to me. I actually talked about that here on your show before. I'd like to go to the regular post before the thread, and then we can do the thread. But
Before
one
the
of
thread.
so if you just go
This one?
under that thread, that's the thread.
Oh. No, this is just your wall.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
yeah. This one here.
Yeah, so before we get there, I just want to say I will be using the messages, and I'm using the messages as a way to illustrate the story, because what this private conversation that's been going on between Sean and I for days, it started out on Mofo Monday, where I literally was coming on to talk about Plevin. So
Yeah.
I was coming on because he was having a show about Kevin, and I was going to come on there. And so I got on there and I sat. It took me a little while to get in because I had a green screen. You see it behind me functional now, but that was kind of the first day I had borrowed it and I was putting it up and I was rushing to get everything ready. I had an audio problem. So I got there right at the time that the live stream started. So I didn't have a chance to go and ahead of time and do a sound check with Sean. And Sean went live the moment that I appeared backstage. And so I sat backstage for about 45 minutes and I was a surprise guest, so very few people knew I was coming. So I sat there for about 45 minutes, and I had a few of my friends that knew I was going to be there, 5 or 10 people. And all of a sudden, I love Micro Dodds, by the way. I was super happy to meet him at the Halloween party. But I had this moment while I was there, and everyone who knew I was going to be there was sending me messages saying, "Get out of there, bail, run." And I opted not to, because I said, anything can happen from here. For instance, if I leave the live stream, Sean could come on and say, "Well, we had not Hailey Walbrecht in the live stream and they're a coward," and they left. And frankly, I was a bit offended by the fact that I was in this live stream and Sean is there and basically insulted a lot of people that I get along with pretty well and that I relate to and have some relationships with here. So I wanted to come out
can't
and make
imagine how uncomfortable that was for you to be backstage while he was doing that.
I'm actually glad that it was 45 minutes long, because it gave me time to, like, if he had done it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and then all of a sudden, like, I was on, I wasn't prepared. But by the time that it was 45 minutes, I knew exactly what I was going to do. By the time first of all, I didn't know if I was ever going to get up because I didn't know if he was ever going to stop. But I was happy by the time he got me on. I knew exactly how I was going to handle it and what I was going to do. And our friend Abby was one of the people texting me saying, "Get out of there." And I was texting Abby back, No, I got this. I know what I'm going to do. So I was happy to come out because I wanted to prove kind of 2 points, which is I wanted to stand up for the people that I get along with and have relationships with. And in some cases, I thought he was being unfair in his criticisms of them.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to kind of prove the point that I'm okay if people have different opinions, that I don't ever, my mantra is I don't tell anyone who to be friends with. So I don't have a problem talking to people who don't believe everything I believe. And I don't have a problem talking to people who don't get along with my friends. And I don't have a problem if my friends talk to people that I don't get along with, because I think that that's kind of how the world works, right? So for me, that was kind of the start of it. So I was disappointed that it played out the way that it did and that I didn't have a warning and any of those things. But all in all, the next day, I felt like my appearance was a little bit overshadowed, obviously, by his rant, but I also felt like I came out unscathed in the sense that I didn't compromise any of my principles. I didn't have any issues based on the fact that I did it. I didn't have a single person tell me that I didn't handle it well. So that's how we started this process. So I gave Sean some grace. I literally reached out to him via DM the next day, as you'll see when my story comes out. And I just said, hey, how's it going? How are you handling the criticism? So I really wanted to, I was actually concerned for Sean too at that moment, wondering, how he was going to handle it and what was going on there. And we had a good dialogue over the next several days. And then, it was we were doing well. We had some back and forth. We were still going in the DMs, and I was trying to get to the bottom of what Sean was doing. But in the DMs, as you'll see coming out in the story that I'm writing now, at one point, Sean told me, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good, but I got some news." And that's kind of the bulk of where this story starts. It was in the next week where I've got some news. I got some news that Aiden's not going to be too happy about. And what I did in that process when he told me that, I just said, I gave him a thumbs up because it's not really my place to insert myself. If he wants to tell me what the news is, he will. And if he doesn't, he won't. And he didn't tell me what the news is. Now we know, that the news was this so-called Tully file that he talks about, that there's a third grand jury and they're looking at the admin chat logs from the Free Karen Read Facebook group and all of these things. I have some serious reservations about that. We'll get into that a little bit more because that's kind of the meat of the article that I'm writing right now. But the whole idea is he was kind of fishing by throwing this out to me, and I just gave him a thumbs up. And then, the next day he said something to me. Oh yeah, things are going well, but I'm gonna have to deal with Aiden.
Yeah.
And I gave him a thumbs up because I said I'm not going to get in the middle of what is going on between Aiden and Sean. I increasingly noticed that Sean was continuing to press the issue. He was continuing to try the little emperor talk, all of this stuff where he kept trying to pick the fight. And for the most part, Aiden was brushing him off. Yeah, he slapped. He wasn't fully engaging until obviously we had this epic show on Saturday night.
Right. And I noticed
but-
that too. He was just saying, like, cool it down, Sean. Calm it down, man. And he was
Right.
going off at him like he was attacking him. He wasn't. I was watching that.
And he was doing it in Aiden's style, right? So of course he was snarky about it a little bit, and that's all right. I think when someone's attacking you every day, I kind of, it really is kind of how I operate in general. So if I'm going to, in general, if you come at me, I'm probably going to make a joke. I'm going to insult you. I'm going to do something or whatever else, and I'm going to move on. Like we're going to have fun, right? So
it just so happens I've got on the screen someone being snarky at you, and you're like, "Listen, you fucking moron."
I do, yeah. I think it's my trademark. I used to have another word as my trademark that's very popular there in Australia, but I had to switch to moron after I became not Hailey Walbrecht instead of Hailey Walbrecht.
Mine's listen, Linda. I actually got that from watching too much bloody Chasing Truth.
I have to, while I'm talking, I have to hop out here real quick. I never shared this stream, so I'm going to very quickly go and do that right now. I do apologize. I've been a little bit busy. So anyway, we had these things happen, and all of a sudden, Sean's doing another live stream. This is not the one that he just did this past Sunday. He had another one in between, and he's on there and he's talking, and Sean, I'm buddies with. We're in the DMs and we're fine. And all of a sudden, I hear my name get brought up, and he starts saying, "Oh, obey like Jason Broyles, obey like Nick Rocco, obey like Aiden Carney." And so it seems clear to me that he's talking to, that he's talking about Karen Read.
He's talking about you are all a cult and you just obey the leaders, and the leaders Karen Read.
And the leader's Karen Read, right? So I took issue with that because here I am. I'm being friendly to Sean. I'm checking on him. I have all of these things. And now he's out there, and he not only in that live stream, that was the live stream where he shared Karen Read's text message as a way to try and embarrass Aiden. So he took a private text message from Karen that had a conversation that occurred in May. And we all know what happened when Aiden Carney went to jail. He went to jail, and it wasn't the best thing for Karen. Everybody had a cooling off period, and people weren't extremely excited about that had occurred. And so they weren't talking. Like it is what it is. We all know it happened.
Yeah.
And so during that period of time, there was a conversation that she had with Sean on the Gulf and basically said just that, where she didn't feel like she could trust him at that period of time because of whatever happened. And it is what it is, but it was never Sean's place to take Karen's private message and use that private message in order to try and score points against Aiden Carney. That to me, it was unforgivable, and that was my moment where I said, here I am. I'm being nice to this guy. I'm annoyed at what he's doing, but at the same time, I'm a man. He's a man. He gets to make his own decisions. So when that happened, um, I was mad, and I sent him a message first in the DMs, and I said, how dare you? Like, I'm an independent journalist, and nobody tells me what to write. Not care. I'd never communicated. It was prior to us releasing on your show that I Microdots knows this because we talked about it at the Halloween party, but it was prior to us releasing on your show that I with Nick Rocco designed the billboard. But that is literally the only contact that I had, and the only person that was my contact in that was Nick Rocco. And I know that several times during the process when we had something that we thought was going to be workable or we did this, Nick Rocco would take that and then go and ask a question. One time, the closest that I ever came, this is like Kevin Bacon and How Many Degrees of Separation. The closest that I ever came to being in communication with Karen Reed was when I was on the phone with Nick Rocco on a not even on the phone. We were on a Facebook, we were on a Facebook Messenger call, and he reached out to John, who was with Karen Reed, to ask a question because he had just sent them something that I had done to get approval or not approval. And then basically, we wanted to know if they liked what we did. So we had sent that out to them to see if they liked what we did. And that was it. That was I was on the other end of a two-way phone call. So like he was on a different phone talking to her and I was on his phone talking to him. And that's the closest I ever came. So there was no conversation, no collusion. So when you're going to tell me that I'm obeying somebody, like nobody tells me what to write. Aiden Carney has never even asked me to write anything. How about that? So we get this thing.
No one ever asked me to do anything either, and I get upset with people. I'm very blunt and straightforward if you start telling me what to do.
I'm going to move my camera down a little. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. I think that, it's almost universal. I mean, I see it when I talk to Mike Crawford. We talk to these people. We really don't, as a creator, I love people giving me story ideas. More importantly, I love people telling me their stories. I hear this a lot, right? We get people's stories. We find out about them. And that's almost why I do this. It's so interesting to me, and to meet the families of some of these victims that, when you're out there and you're really, it does give you a really great feeling that you're able to kind of make a difference and maybe go and speak up for somebody. And that's why I do this. So I do like talking to people, and I want people to give me story ideas, but don't tell me what to do. Tell me your story. And if I want to write about it, I'm gonna ask me to do something. Could you write about me, or could you write about this, or could you help me with this case? I get this all the time where it's, oh, there's a missing persons case and they want to talk to me about it. And sometimes I just give people advice.
Yeah.
A lot of what I do is literally just talking to victims or victims' families, having conversations with them and helping them find the resources that they need. Sometimes I'm not involved at all, and I don't write about it, and I never talk about it to anybody else. I do this every day, day in and day out. So when Sean said that about me, I was really, really mad. And I said to him in the DMs, I said, how dare you do this? How dare you use Karen's DM? And how dare you talk about me like I obeyed somebody? And what I got back was, oh, I have I get back this thing where it's like, I said, Sean, how dare you say that? Oh no, that obey thing, that was about something else. Like, you don't even understand. Like, that was old from a long time ago. And I'm like, well, you said it about me. You said my name and said that I should continue to obey. So if you're talking about something from a long time ago or something with somebody else, I don't know why you would say my name in that. And that is kind of the tenor, as you'll see when my story comes out a little bit later tonight, is that the tenor of that is, there's a lot of those conversations. You shared, I think you used the graphic for this video that I made, And in that video, Sean is dressed up as in my graphic, Sean is dressed up as the Riddler. And I have to say, a lot of my communication with Sean over these past 96 hours, especially, um, there's a lot of confusion going on there, where there's a lot of answers that don't necessarily line up with what we're talking about. And I really noticed it kind of right at that moment where he had done that and shared the thing with Karen Reed. We had this situation where he talked to me about something when I was on his show. I told a story about Springfield, Mass, about a police officer that was involved in a bar along with a mobster. And Sean, out of the blue, more than a week later, when we're having this conversation about, now I have to oppose you publicly because you went and said this thing about me. Uh, I was going back and forth with him in the DMs about this, and then he suddenly referenced a story that I had told on his show, over a week earlier, and he named a police officer in Springfield, Mass, and said, "Oh yeah, that thing about this Kevin Burnham, that's crazy." Only that wasn't the police officer I was talking about. That police officer had nothing to do with the story I was talking about. It was a police officer in Springfield, Mass. There was a scandal. He committed suicide, and people say he committed suicide in order for his wife to be able to collect his pension. There was all kinds of things that were happening. He embezzled money. I knew the story he was talking about, and it didn't match the story that I told on his show. And that was my first sign that, oh, maybe there's something more happening here. Like, this is not necessarily just this isn't just this problem where we have a situation where Sean's being difficult or belligerent. That was my first indication, and I may be naive, but that was my first indication that we actually had kind of a problem in terms of his ability to comprehend everything that was happening in the
Yeah.
process. And you know what? Sean, he's not a young guy. And I'll give him credit for, for being his age. He's actually very he's tech savvy enough to be able to operate his StreamYard or whatever else that he does. And I don't know if he knew how to get his background on in his last video, but he still is able to go in there. He was able to basically boot all of his mods. He did all kinds of things. So
Hmm.
but that's the first indication I knew we had a problem. The next and the next thing that came, of course, was, so we had more back and forth in the
Can I just
DMs.
interrupt you for 1 second?
Please do.
Ria, there's actually two videos. My last two videos on my channel will help you to put these pieces together. It's that all of this is being used to revoke Karen's bail. That's what the problem is.
Yeah,
So
and I do want to address that, and I actually do. I know that you get some pushback for your position on that, Aussie, but I actually agree with you, and
I don't get
and it's
any pushback, actually. There's only a couple of Sean friends that say, no, it's not. But other than
right.
that, I actually don't get any pushback at all. Everyone agrees.
I think
Everyone
the
can
trick.
see the connections once they see my my slideshow. They see all the connections happening.
Yeah, and I think the trick is that a lot of people think that Sean is trying to have Karen Reed's bail revoked, and I think that what people need to understand is that my position on this, and I can tell you again, up till about 30 minutes ago, I've been in this DM conversation. Sean doesn't necessarily agree with me, but my position on this is that Sean's been played for a fool. So we have this situation where we
No,
have
because
Sean.
he's really just trying to get TB chucked in jail. But the point of that, like the end product of getting TB chucked in jail because you hate TB, is that now Karen, it's going to reflect on Karen. They're going to make those connections again and have a new grand jury. Obviously, that's what's happening in January. A new grand jury trying to connect Karen to TB.
Well, so here's the news. So I guess I'll break a little bit of news from my article. So part of the I have information, and the information that I have, it's got to come out in my article tonight anyway. So I might as well break a little bit of that here. The information that I have is that there was, the conversation keeps being about this file, the new Tully file, and we have all of these things. I have that file. I don't know. I have that file, and there are others that have that file. And that file that I haven't gone through it completely yet. I got it at some time fairly recently. But what I can tell you is that file is not what it's being sold as, because not only do I have that file, but I had information that that file was presented to the Massachusetts State Police, and the Massachusetts State Police looked at that file and they weren't very excited at what they saw and thought that the things in that file didn't happen to be incriminating. And the person who was trying to push that file on behalf of Kate Peter to the Mass State Police was sent away. And it is my opinion, and this is pure speculation, that the next thing that they did with that file is they sent that person to Sean on the Gulf and they sold him a bill of goods, because the most important thing for them was to get that file out in the court of public opinion. So now we have Sean, who's out here saying he's got this file and it's this big scandal and we have all of this stuff going on. It's a file that has already been rejected by the Mass State Police. There is no third grand jury. This is all an operation that's being run on Sean McDonough. And Sean is mad and full of piss and vinegar and vitriol, and he's saying all of these things. And I do believe that he believes a lot of what he's saying. Unfortunately,
I think he believes it too. Like,
we're going to get into
a lot of bullshit artists. They come to believe their own bullshit.
So, we're going to get into the darker side of that in my article. But what I want to do is, I do want to go. You had that comment up a few minutes ago where you directed her to your previous two videos to talk about all of this. I see people out there, and I see people who, some of them have been my followers for a long time. And I see them looking at this stuff and they're saying, oh no, like this is horrible and both sides are fighting and we have all of this stuff. I just want to make it crystal clear that this is not what's happening. And I don't actually intend, probably beyond my article tonight, to talk about Sean on the Gulf anymore, because what I'm doing is I'm exposing some things that needed to be exposed. Because I think what happens is we get in these spaces and people look at Aiden Carney and they look at Sean on the Gulf and they look at some of these other creators and they create these idealized versions of them where they're gods. I think we all know that Aiden Carney is a human, right? We see the whole Lindsay Gaetani situation. We see that there was a situation where Kate was able to get in and go after Lauren Murray because Aiden was entangled with Lauren Murray. Like, he's a human. He's a person and he has failings like everybody else, right? So I think that it gets really dangerous.
He makes mistakes like all of us do.
I think it gets really dangerous when we start taking people and we put them on such a pedestal. Now, I'm a fan of Aiden Carney, right? I'm a fan of him. I have conversations with him quite frequently. I love what he does in terms of his journalism. I like what he does. I don't like everything
on his work.
I'm a fan of his work. I don't like everything he does, but I also do know him a little bit differently than I did, let's say, back when he went to jail at the end of December, right? When he got out of jail in February, for the 5 years prior to that I had come across him multiple times, right? I became more of a fan of him as a person once I really started to get to know him. Because part of the problem with Aiden Carney is he has this negative publicity machine that follows him around. And so when you hear all of these stories about Aiden Carney, yes, sure, he comes off as being cocky. You ever meet him in person, I'll tell you right now, he comes off as being quiet. He's not, unless he's speaking. If you put him behind a microphone, and you can see that change, right? But Aiden Carney is actually, when you're face to face and you're talking to him and you have these conversations, he's actually a pretty nice guy. He is not the person that everybody thinks that they see. So when you have these conversations, you don't see that. So
the moral to the story is, don't put us on pedestals, and then we can't disappoint you. If your expectation is low, that is, we're all human, then you've got room for a pleasant surprise. Also, assuming that we have a guest on, and that guest must be reiterating our own points of view, is again only your perception. I personally only share my platform with people who are going to have an adult discussion. Whether they agree with me or not is completely beside the point. And whether I agree with them is completely beside the point. The point is, can we have an adult and mature discussion that isn't going to reduce itself to chaos and blow the ears out of everybody listening, because opinionated people are speaking over the top of opinionated people and turning it into a shit show? I'm sure you all appreciate a level-headed and calm discussion as much as I do.